Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly ag weather forecast for AgSouth Farm Credit. We've got a lot that needs to be covered in this video because I have brand new long-range information at the end, but in the interim, we have to talk about how we're going to be transitioning out of February 1st, and then we got to just really have a discussion about what we've done in terms of moisture recovery this winter. So this is the last week. That's what this map shows. And once again, we have seen the subtropical jet deliver, not just to AgSouth, but the whole of the South and the Mid-South. And what's been amazing is if we look at our newest drought monitor and compare how much it's changed just over the last 7 weeks, we have had near elimination of drought in this area. The whole country since the last fall has seen a reduction in drought area that's now down 25% over where it was last fall. And this has been an incredible winter to see the drought recover. Now, there are places that are missing. I am concerned about parts of western Texas going back over drier. The northern plains are looking drier, especially when you get up here into parts of Montana where the snowpack still needs to be rebuilt. And that is not to ignore coastal North Carolina and South Carolina. This has been a little strip in through here that has been drier as of late. But if you just look at the current drought monitor itself, we're drought free in AgSouth territory. That is just abnormally dry. We don't consider that to be a drought category. Drought free right now. Now, as you look around the rest of the country, I want you to know about some issues that are happening in the Midwest. I'm going to cover again in a minute, but just put this in the back of your mind as you think about corn and soybeans in the I states. From here, I want to show you where we've been in terms of total snow. Now, we've not had any, in AgSouth territory. We're yet to get snow this year, but it's also important to note where we've been missing out on some bigger snows that typically do get them. So I want to show you the season-to-date snowfall map when you compare it to average. Notice big section of the Ohio Valley, the northern plains of the United States, pockets in the Pacific Northwest have yet to get a good snowfall event that could come through. And this is just important for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is what we end up getting in terms of snow melt in the spring along the big river systems. That's critical actually to the success of the growing season here in the Midwest. So I know we compete a lot with crops, Midwest versus the Carolinas and parts of Georgia, so I want you to be aware of that. There have been multiple snows that have come into the panhandle, so think cotton. There's been some good moisture recovery in the panhandles, which I think need to keep an eye on as we go forward. But one thing that has really defined this winter is this map here. Since December 1st through February 15th, the upper Midwest has had one of its warmest, if not the warmest winter on record. The Great Lakes are less than 3% covered in ice right now. That's extremely rare. And if there's been a cooler spot, it's been down here in the south and southeast. That's it. And that's not even really that cool. We've really only had one significant shot at really cold air. And I'll be honest, this is playing out to the T of what an El Niño typically does during winter. Bigger picture, what it typically does. Now, I do want you to be aware of some of the western United States water resources because there are crops, of course, that we grow here that are also grown in parts of the Cotton Belt all the way over to the Four Corners states in California. So the Colorado Basin right now is sitting at 92%, almost 92.5% of normal snowpack. That's great. I'd love to see it at 105, but we're there. That means the Colorado River will have water in it to use for irrigation for much of the west and southwest. For the rest of the western mountains, snowpack is great throughout the Great Basin, southern Rockies. It's decent in the Sierra Nevadas. The places that are missing out a bit are here in the Pacific Northwest. But keeping on this theme of watching water resources, I'm going to go back to December 1 and show you what our root zone soil moisture map as modeled by NASA looked like so that you can see how much of this has been repaired getting into February 15th. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, yes, we still have some drier areas in North Carolina and pockets of South Carolina. This is going to go away in a hurry with some of the moisture that's coming in here. But look at Ohio, Indiana, parts of Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, and this section of Minnesota. There is still a deficit there. And if that is not undone between now and spring, like the truly spring time period, March, April, and early May, then we just run the risk of not having enough moisture in the soil to help us should we get into some drier weather. Now, I've got new long-range data coming up here in a minute, but I need you to be thinking about this. Okay, Mississippi River, just as an update, after being up to 12 feet below low stage back at the end of last year, we're now at about 12 feet above low stage. So that's a 24-foot recovery, and the river will continue to kind of do something like that on average with time as we press through spring. But one last thing to look at here, since the beginning of this new year, this is precipitation ranks by climate district. And most of AgSouth territory is on the wetter side of the distribution, save these 3 climate reporting districts right here in this pocket of northern Florida. So we are going to look to see what the atmosphere is up to and capable of delivering in terms of getting more moisture back into place. But most of the pattern going forward is not going to be super wet except for Florida in the near term. March is another story. There's a low today sitting here. Behind it, some much, much colder air. This is going to go straight to the mid-Atlantic, which means we're going to get some Appalachian snow out of this. We can see that here, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, that's where we're going to be looking out for our biggest snows out of this system. But you can see that after all that heavy rain that's happened, not only here in parts of Georgia and South Carolina, but also down here in the Delta, the lower Mississippi River Basin, many of our rivers right now are flooding. And that's what each one of these little polygons is suggesting. So what are we watching? Well, the system to our north skirts right over the top of me today. In fact, we've already had about 2 inches of snow this morning. I'm looking out my window right now. That doubled up our annual snowfall in Champaign, Illinois, where I live. But as this presses east, what do we end up getting? You get 2 things. The subtropical jets coming underneath this. And then you have this system that by the time we get into tonight is going to be sitting here on Friday right up against the Appalachian Mountains, but up here in West Virginia coming out of Kentucky. So that pushes into the mid-Atlantic and hits DC with some snow. And we try to bring some snow some rain, cold rain, to the western side of the Appalachian Mountains and Blue Ridge Mountains. So playing through early morning Saturday, could you get some light rain out of this colder rain coming into North Carolina? Sure. But I think the heaviest rain is going to be south. Underneath the strong subtropical flow, we're going to get our heaviest rain right in this area. I'll show you the totals in a moment. But after that rolls through this weekend, there's Sunday into Monday. Look at that. Look at that. Wow. Here it is again. Watch it all. Saturday, Sunday, into Monday. Look at that. That's going to push some good moisture across that area. To see how it all plays out, though, can we combine models here? GFS left, European right. This is getting through the day on Friday today into Saturday and Sunday. Look at the heavier rains that's going to come down here, clipping parts of AgSouth territory. After that goes through, high pressure, cooler air to start our new week, and not a whole lot to talk about. There's coastal low, but it's way off the coast. We may be waiting till next Thursday, Friday, to get our next system to come through. That's it. I mean, that's how far out we are in getting the next round of rain to come through. So can we add it all up real quick? High-res European model. You know the push that's coming through with that front, that's going to be snow getting up into this area, rain down here, and then that front slides over Saturday, not a whole lot being added in here. But as the farther you go to the south, better chances in southern Georgia getting into Florida, getting some precip out of this. But when's our next chance? I just played through, watch, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's how quickly I went through it because we're not getting much out of this. And then here starts next Thursday, Friday with the system trying to come through. But that's so far out in the forecast, we got to wait and be patient on it. Now, just so you know, could get some light snow out of this pattern. Maybe some light snow here, but that's about it. It's going to be cool, but not cold enough. If I compare that to the GFS, it's the more aggressive on the snow, but that's mostly up in Virginia, West Virginia, not necessarily down here in the Carolina-Tennessee border. All right, so now we just need to look at some probabilities before we get into this longer range. What you're looking at here is the chance in the next 10 days of staying under 1/10 of an inch. And we've got like up to a 30, maybe 40% chance in this area of staying under 1/10 of an inch. It's quite dry in the southwest into Texas. It's dry out of the Canadian Prairie into the northern plains. On the wetter side of this is the probability of getting an inch. Now you see that as you get out of southern Georgia into Florida, that probability really increases. And then beyond that, it's just the west coast getting hammered with moisture out of this pattern. So from here, let me show you what I'm excited about as we work our way into this longer range. I kind of wanted to get through the near-term stuff quickly because there's not a whole big story going on there. This is what I'm interested in. I've not seen that yet this winter. A deep low over the Aleutian Islands, the subtropical jet going to the south, the polar jet beginning to show up. That's going to be really important for the end of February and beginning of March. Now, by next Friday, we got this deeper trough that's in place, and that's that system I told you next Thursday, Friday we're going to watch. But after it, watch this. Saturday the 24th, Sunday the 25th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's the second to last day of February, getting into the 29th, the last day. Wow, I've not seen the jet stream do that. That's a deep trough in the west. Excuse me. I've seen it do it in the past, but I haven't seen it do it this winter. That's a polar jet showing up. And this is really going to light things up for us. Now, right now, the week 2 outlook, the 23rd to the 20th, is just beginning to show that change where we're dropping a trough into the west. And what does it do after that? Does it send systems across the country? I think it does. But it's not going to be picked up just yet in the 8 to 14 day outlook. It's at the end of that time period, the beginning of March, where I think things are going to change around a bit. Now, before I come back to that, can I show you what the temperatures are up to? Because early this morning on Friday, we were still pretty mild. But look at the cold air that's tucked away back here. That's coming. It's just not going to last long. We thought, go back to the beginning of February, we thought we'd get a good 5-6 day shot at colder air. But this is all the longer it's going to last. Are you ready? There's Friday's high temperatures. Saturday starting to cool down. Sunday cold. I mean cold for us this time of year. Highs in the upper 40s, low 50s, and then getting down towards 60 as you approach Florida. But then watch. Monday recovery. Tuesday back to normal. Wednesday warm, Thursday warm. I mean, we're really warming this back up. And take a look at this. That's day 5 through 10. And this is day 10 through 15. That's the beginning of March. And you see the cold air coming in here? That's the polar jet showing up, and it's going to dive down and make that turn. And that's what I'm excited to see in the month of March. It's not just the GFS that's showing this either. The European ensemble, that's day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. So it looks like the groundhog nailed one this year, right? I mean, that's a pretty good outlook, I think, in terms of temperatures. So is there any reason to call for a big cold air outbreak? And right now, the answer to that is no. If the MJO drops into null space, which is what it's forecast to do, rather than spend time over here in phases 7, 8, 1, and 2, there's no tropical teleconnection to say, get ready for sustained cold east of the Rocky Mountains. And plus, we're getting into March. And what happens in March? We gain, in the Carolinas especially, about 90 minutes of daylight and much higher sun angles. So what are we going to be paying attention to? Well, are we going to get any support out of the Arctic for cold? There's a big push, what we call sudden stratospheric warming event that's happening here in the Bering Sea, big high pressure cell in the stratosphere. But what did it do? Instead of pushing the polar vortex toward us, it shoved it all the way over to Russia. And that's where this story gets really interesting for me. Because for the next 10 days, as really cold air sets up here, I've got mild air over Europe and mild air over China. So the jet's got to go over this, south of that, which means it's going to hit the Himalayas. And you're going to get this really strong thermal gradient here, which is going to induce something called the thermal wind. The thermal wind is what makes the jet stream. I think it's going to get cranking here and want to go more toward the Bering Sea than into the subtropics. Now, what the point is in all of that is that means March, if it gets kicked off with this, will likely look something like this. This is brand new. The trend all week has been pointing to this, and that is get ready for an active March. Now, if that changes, if I see anything that suggests that this is the wrong analysis, I will tell you next week or the week after. But I'm telling you right now, I'm seeing a pretty active branch of the jet diving in, rolling out, opening up the Gulf, and really setting us off on a very active, probably very stormy March overall. And that fits with history as well. Historically, whenever we have an El Niño, that whole region tends to be wetter and more active. The jet tends to dip around this cooler air and race on off toward the northeast. That's what happens every time in the past when there's been an El Niño since 1950, what March has looked like. Now, I cannot give you an accurate representation of what I think April is going to look like. No one can. April is a transition month. It is the strongest seasonal transition we have of the year. We gain a lot of sunlight. We gain a lot of high angle sun, and it's a volatile month. It's the least predictable. But what I do want to do is show you what will be changing in April, and that will be our ocean temperatures. Now listen, El Niño is fading slowly, very slowly. The Atlantic is quite warm, and we got to watch here and here. These two areas tend to dictate the way the Pacific jet enters. And what I'm telling you is that when you compare that to what's going on with El Niño, which is just very, very slowly coming off of its peak around Christmas and fading, that it's the rate at which this fades, El Niño, and the rate at which the temperatures change here that I think are most critical, because I'm actually not expecting a lot of ocean temperature change in the Atlantic, which is important for the hurricane season, which I'll mention in a moment. But this is what I've got. If we look out there, we have a model called the CFS V2. It's absolutely killing El Niño, and by summer bringing in full-blown, strong La Niña. The European model says, nope, it's going to be neutral by summer. And why that's so important is this is what the CFSV2 wants to do. You see, it wants to come in and by June, July, August, give us a big omega block like that. That's not a bad look, but it's a bad look if you're in the Midwest, the plains, the whole central ag belt of the United States. So we are very concerned on my side of the country about this happening. But we know that that model, the CFSV2, is an outlier. And if you look at all the other models, the March, April, May pattern suggests wetter in here. See that? It says wetter for you, definitely. Active spring. And then for summer, it's not turning it off. It's just suggesting that we resist ridging. Now, I have no idea. No one does. We need to wait until we get past April to know if there's any risk of the subtropical high sitting over, Charlotte. It's done that in the past, even though it's been forecast wet. We have to wait to see how this transitions. But as it stands today, the models are attempting to bring the drought out of Central America up the western plains of the United States. That's May, June, July. And if you want to, later today, go to the web, go to cpc.ncep.noaa.gov. Or just Google CPC, Climate Prediction Center. And you'll land on this page, go right over here to the words 3-month outlook and click. And what you're going to be taken to is the actual forecast just updated last night from our government. And they're good scientists. These are good people working hard on this. Ready? This is their April, May, June precipitation outlook. Look familiar? Yeah, wet. What about their, that was March, April, May. What about April, May, June? Same thing. What about May, June, July? Still wet. What about June, July, August? Still wet. Now, when you look at this, I imagine some of you are taking the contrarian view, and that's perfectly healthy and fine. Because the CPC is the National Multi-Model Ensemble, is the European model accurate and skillful all the time? Heck no, it's not. That's why I show them to you so we can begin to measure against them. But can you agree with me that when you come back here and look at what changed, let's go back to that drought change map for the last 7 weeks, that these models, which I used for guidance over winter, which predicted this, did a pretty darn good job figuring that out. So I'm giving them some credit, some benefit of the doubt that when I look out here and see this shaping up for summer, I have to look at it and say, okay, I see what you're doing, and it's going to be prompted by changes in El Niño, changes in the North Pacific with ocean temperatures, I think getting warmer rather than cooler, and the fact that the Atlantic Ocean is still very much warm. So what does that mean for August, September, October? This is going to be a point where the models will not be able to tell you what the hurricane season is going to be, but let's actually go to September, October, November. I think at this point, the Gulf and the Western Atlantic will be critical to watch to see if we get a really active hurricane season going. I'm concerned about that this year. Why am I concerned about it? Because if this El Niño begins to fade by late summer and it's gone, and we keep the warmth in the Atlantic, which looks likely to be true, the main development region's got a lot of heat to work with, lower wind shear, and we're going to kick off systems. So this is an elevated year for risk, in my opinion. Lastly, on the global scale, Europe, mild and stormy north, drier around the Black Sea, drier over to Italy, Turkey, Greece. Very wet in eastern Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria. Hurricane, or not a hurricane, they call them tropical cyclones going across the northern part of Australia and the Northern Territory. Western Australia, which has been dry, has got a chance too. Look at that. That's a lot of wet weather into Brazil's region where they grow safrinha corn. Perfect for what they need to be doing. And then it's drier in southern Brazil. Storms trying to return to Argentina. But overall, the thing I'll be most concerned about for South America is now that safrinha corn's going in and there's good moisture, what happens to it in March and April? Because the models are suggesting bringing in drier conditions off the Amazon at that time, which could prompt an early end to their season, too much dry air. That'll be what I'm watching. So I appreciate your attention. We'll talk again next Friday. Thanks.